I'm DK Rossa. This is TTT Live. This week's post-cabinet media briefing is being held at the Diplomatic Center in St. Anne's. We're bringing you live coverage on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and on Facebook at TTT Live Online. We go now to the Diplomatic Center.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to our viewing and listening audience. Good afternoon to members of media and my cabinet colleagues, and welcome to our post-cabinet press briefing. I'm joined today by the Minister of Education, the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. They will each speak on some topics that we would like to bring to the attention of the public, and afterwards we will take questions. So let me move right away to the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Minister Norborough, members of the media, viewing and listening audience. The Ministry of Education wishes to announce a change in the date of the SEA, formally scheduled for June 10, 2021. This has become necessary due to the trajectory of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing challenges posed by the health regulations at this time. During initial stakeholder consultations held on April 22, 2021, the COVID-19 seven-day average for Trinidad and Tobago was 89, with new cases at 81. Due to concerns about the safety of face-to-face interactions with those numbers of positive cases, and taking into account the students who had been working diligently towards having SEA on that date, the decision was taken to leave the examination on June 10th with the clear understanding that physical preparation classes were not likely, and the desire to cause the least disruption possible to these students who have already been through a challenging time over the past 14 months. When this decision was announced on April 28th, the numbers had increased from 81 to 223, with a seven-day average of 136, up from 89. As we speak today, there has been an even more rapid increase in the infection rate of the virus, with new infections reported at over 600 in recent daily updates, and a current seven-day average as high as 478. The government has put strict and robust measures in place to reduce the COVID-19 numbers, and the Ministry of Education, along with the rest of the country, has been monitoring the COVID-19 numbers daily to gauge how quickly the decrease would be realized, and we all acknowledged that the exam could only proceed in an atmosphere of safety for all stakeholders. This remains the government's first priority. On August 20th, 2020, when the last SEA examination was held, the number of infections reported was 81, with a seven-day average of 52. Compare that to our present numbers of 501 and a seven-day average approximating 478, and it is clear that the 3 weeks left to the scheduled June 10th date for SEA will likely not be enough to allow for the level of decrease needed to achieve an atmosphere of reasonable safety in which to implement the examination. In the consultations of April 2021, the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, Principal and Parent Associations, along with the nominational boards, agreed that a reasonable alternative to the June 10th date for SEA was July 1st, 6 weeks from today, which, based on the current regulations, should allow the elapse of enough time for the rate of infections and active cases to be reduced to a level deemed reasonably safe for the conduct of the examination. Additionally, in 6 weeks' time, with the second phase of the vaccination program well underway, the level of vaccinations among the population should be much higher. Teachers who are and will be in closest or repeated physical contact with students have been targeted as a priority group, and the Ministry of Health will accommodate this subset of teachers for priority vaccination. Further discussions will be held on this issue, including with tutor. Therefore, based on the health considerations as explained, and mindful of the mixed views on the matter of the SEA date, and with the number one priority being the safety of our citizens, the government has taken the decision that the SEA should be postponed to Thursday, July 1st, 2021. While the examinations are important and all preparations are being made for their safe conduct, they are not more important than the health of the population, and the latter will not be sacrificed for the sake of the former. The Ministry of Education continues to collaborate closely with the Caribbean Examinations Council, the Ministry of Health, and other public sector agencies to ensure the safety and protection of all concerned. It should be noted that the CXC, which administers the SEA examination, was written to on April 23, 2021, in light of the rapid uptick in COVID-19 positive cases, to alert them to a possible date shift, and the schedule was also at that time reworked to accommodate that possibility. The Ministry of Education is therefore on track with all preparations, and the results of the SEA are expected to be released in the second week of September to facilitate the placement of students in secondary schools by the third week of September. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister of Education. Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, if you wouldn't mind joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister de Nobrega. Since the start of COVID, or the intensification in March 2020, the Cabinet appointed a subcommittee to deal with issues relating to business, jobs, and food in particular, agriculture included. And that committee is chaired by Minister Gopi Schoon. It involves Minister Rohan Sindanan and myself, as well as business representatives, including those from the chamber, the supermarkets, and various agriculture interests. And I think that what the farmers in particular in this country have demonstrated in the last year, that they have the capacity, even in the most difficult circumstances, to feed this country. I think initially there were these reports of food being dumped to the closure of the restaurants and the food places and so on. That was never proven, of price gouging and so on. But once agriculture was declared an essential service in the first set of regulations, markets were able to open, the farmers have been able to plant and to do what they have to do. And we've had no issues really. And in relation to the supermarkets and so on, with the support of the Supermarkets Association, the Port Authority, the Minister of Works and Transport, in making sure that goods are cleared, and we've been able to maintain a very steady supply of even the imported produce. As we came into 2021, there were some issues with price increases, and Minister of Trade and Industry and myself, we've made it clear that we've seen the uptick, particularly in the relation to imported grain. National Flour Mills they've put out a press release today pointing to some of those increases in prices and in shipping costs, but they have been able to maintain their prices. So we've had to deal with those issues. But perhaps the most important thing the ministry has done with the farmers has been the program to distribute packages comprising vegetables, fruit, and locally produced chickens to persons across both Trinidad and Tobago. And we launched the program last year. By September last year, we were able to do about 30,000 families, and the quality has always been high, very well received, and distributed via members of parliament and NGOs across the country, faith-based organizations, community organizations. On May 3rd, 2021, when the Prime Minister spoke at one of the press conferences, he announced that we were going to resume that initiative, and in that first, on May 3rd, what was announced were restrictions for that period up to May 23rd. And the figure was 25,000 packages or families to benefit. And right away, May 3rd, NAMDEVCO set about to start the distribution. And the first was done on Friday, May 7th. And to date, we've done about 13,000 of those packages. We aim, of course, in the first month to do 25,000. And on May 10th, the Minister of Finance announced an expansion of the program. So where on May 3rd we estimated that we were going to distribute it to 600 per Member of Parliament, with the announcement on May 10th, we've been able to double that and spread it over 12 weeks at a rate of 100 per week per Member of Parliament. And we think that so far it's gone well, it's been well received, we are on target, and I want to thank the farmers of the country for being able to sustain us through this program, and the staff at NAMDEVCO who work round the clock to make sure that we get it out and we maintain the quality of the produce. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I want to, as MP for Diego Martin Central, I want to take an opportunity to tell you thank you. Even at my constituency office, we were distributing yesterday, so thank you very much. Minister Brown, I believe you are here to speak as well, so if you would join us.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, Minister of Communication. The acquisition of COVID-19 vaccines that are approved by the World Health Organization remains a top priority of the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the benefit of all the people of our country. I am pleased to announce an additional development with respect to vaccine acquisition today. We have benefited from a generous donation of AstraZeneca vaccines by the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. An Air Guard flight using a C-26B aircraft departed Trinidad and Tobago this morning, arrived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, was efficiently loaded with these AstraZeneca vaccines, and has just landed at Piarco Airport with vaccines to be immediately received and properly managed by our health authorities. This was the result of significant diplomatic work and communication at the highest levels between our respective heads of government, Prime Minister the Honorable Keith Rowley, with Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has also been significantly involved, and I have been working very closely with my counterpart in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Kaisal Peters. These vaccines will expire at the end of June, and the Ministry of Health has indicated that they would have sufficient time to ensure that they are fully and properly utilized for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So they are currently within our country. We also had some further good news last night. Again, the Prime Minister has been centrally involved in these discussions, and I'm pleased to report that Bermuda has also indicated that they are donating 8,000, it could be a little bit more, but we've confirmed 8,000 AstraZeneca vaccines from Bermuda. The details of the conveyance of those vaccines to Trinidad and Tobago are being finalized as we speak. We anticipate they will be within our jurisdiction very early next week. So this is in addition to the diplomatic work that resulted in the provision of 100,000 Sinopharm or WHO-approved vaccines, which arrived on Wednesday morning, yesterday morning. We have an additional 16,000 AstraZeneca that arrived this afternoon. We have 8,000 further AstraZeneca that will arrive early next week. That has been confirmed. And preceding all of this, you would recall, was 40,000 AstraZeneca donated by the government of India. Again, these are some of the rewards for ongoing diplomatic work. And by now it is in the public record that we are working assiduously at all levels in pursuit of positive details associated with the announcements coming out of the White House and the Biden administration in the United States of America. What I can say at this stage is that the feedback and signals that we have been receiving have been extremely positive for CARICOM as a whole and for Trinidad and Tobago in particular. As further details come to hand, we will be certain to share them as appropriate with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will open the floor to questions.
Minister Brown, in the context of the St. Vincent, the donation from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in light of the situation there with the volcano and so on, how did the conversation go in terms of them donating vaccines at a time when they are going through their own crisis?
Thank you very much for the question. Well, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Tobago have an extremely long history of very close relations. That has been maintained and enhanced by the respective governments during the current period. And you would be aware that this country, our government and our people, were generous to a significant degree during the crisis in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we're also quite generous to Barbados as well, because they were also affected. So in terms of the most recent exchanges, there's been a significant volume of resources transferred from Trinidad and Tobago to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that certainly has engendered some additional warmth and gratitude. In addition, the CARICOM and the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines have been mindful of this serious situation with respect to the pandemic here in Trinidad and Tobago. They have been confronted by some challenges. I don't want to go into all of the details. There's some significant vaccine hesitancy, particularly in some of the smaller islands in the region. And there's a sense of responsibility that while they work on confronting vaccine hesitancy, no island wants to end up with vaccines that would have to be discarded. And therefore, some of these elements came together, all anchored by the strong and consistent advocacy at the international level by our Prime Minister, which has resulted in recognition that Trinidad and Tobago certainly is a very important and attractive destination for vaccines at this time. I'm hoping that next week and in the coming weeks, we will be able to share further good news as the result of the ongoing advocacy and attention to the circumstances in Trinidad and Tobago.
You mentioned 16,000. That's from St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
That is correct. And 8,000 from Bermuda.
These are not necessarily vaccines that they need at this time.
No, well, they aren't. And the discussion went into to explore those details, and we certainly are not depriving anyone of vaccines. The offer was made by St. Vincent and the Grenadines and graciously accepted by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, Minister Dolly, I'm looking at the CXC timetable here, and so we spoke about SCA, but looking at CXC, we have some, for the languages, we have the orals happening on June the 1st, which is, if you calculated, about 11 days from now. Maybe some and then mid-month. I mean, you'll know this better than me, actually. Mid-month, the rest pick up music and so on. These orals, Portuguese, French, Spanish, any consideration to postponing them at all?
Just to note that as of Monday, CXC would have written, Monday or Tuesday, they would have written expressing their views on possible postponement and some other recommendations that have been forwarded, notably from the Caribbean Union of Teachers, and the recommendations also coming out of the different member states of CARICOM. So CXC would have responded to us on these matters, and we would have sent forward a position based on our circumstances at this time. We would be in support of a postponement not more than 3 weeks. There are some issues surrounding the students, for example, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that need a closer look, and so all of the member states have been asked to, by today, submit their views based on the recommendations of CXC, and Trinidad and Tobago would have done so today. Another thing to mention with respect to orals is what has come out of the curriculum division and discussion with the local registrar and so on, is the possibility of using the virtual technology and having the teacher and the student separate and interacting on virtual technology, so that though the oral can continue, it will not necessarily involve them being in the same space, so as to maximize the health of both the teachers and the students. So those discussions are also ongoing, and so we look now to the response of CXC as they collate the responses of the region on the recommendations that they have advanced based on the recommendations of COSAD, and that would have involved the Ministers of Education. And so that discussion is actively ongoing. However, we have indicated that we would not be against postponement of maybe 3 weeks, because to go beyond that will lead us into other difficulties in terms of the timing of the exams, the results that the students will get, and it catapults into a different level of difficulty with them getting into different universities and so on.
I'll just press you on the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks is specifically referring to the June 1st orals, or does the 3 weeks...
The entire start of the exam.
Okay, because let's say about the 20th or so, the 20th of June is roughly when some of the, let's say the science written papers. Would the 3 weeks be applied to all dates or just for the...
To all dates. We are saying all dates, because there are other issues which are arising and which have been advanced that would support a postponement to allow students a bit more preparation time, because the SBAs, of course, have also been impacted by the events of different territories having to have school curtailed and so on. And so we are also supporting from Trinidad and Tobago increased deadline for the SBAs and in a 3-week delay in the start of all examinations.
One question, Kimberly D'Souza from TTT News. My question is to Dr. Dolly. Just going back to the priority consideration for the school personnel, we have the 1,000 Sinopharm vaccines that we're supposed to be rolling out tomorrow. We're also getting donations from Bermuda and St. Vincent. Can you just give us an update on how soon you think the school personnel will be vaccinated?
Well, I can't give you an update as to the schedule, but I can let you know that we have provided all of the information to the Ministry of Health, and they have contacted us as of today indicating that they want to have that priority subset given to them by next week. And so we will be having that discussion to ensure that we forward those particular names of that subset to them by next week.
To the Education Minister, could you also give a sense of the... Oh, sorry.
Minister Brown, you know that our TNT embassy in Washington was supposed to have a meeting with the U.S. coordinator for COVID, and Mr. Gail Smith. That meeting was supposed to take place yesterday. Could you give us any update? Did the meeting come off, and is there anything you can share with us from that?
Yes, thank you for your question. The Ambassador of Trinidad and Tobago to the United States of America, His Excellency Anthony Philip Spencer, did meet yesterday afternoon with Ms. Gail Smith, who is the State Department's coordinator of the global COVID response. What I'm able to tell you at this point is that the discussions were very positive, again, they were conducted in furtherance of significant advocacy that is ongoing, that involves multiple levels of engagement, that has deployed our mission staff fully in pursuit, that has involved engagement with the United States Embassy here in Port of Spain, virtually daily pursuit, engagement, follow-up, communication, exchange of information with the embassy here. It also involves the Prime Minister remaining engaged with his contacts at the White House. Most particularly, we've been following up with Dr. Beth Cameron, who's the Special Assistant to President Biden and Senior Director for Global Health Security and Biodefense. It also involves engagements with Benny Thompson, who is a senior U.S. Congressman representing the state of Mississippi, who is also chair of the House Homeland Security Committee, and who is recognized, he's met with the Prime Minister before, they know each other, who's recognized as what I can say is an advocate for the Caribbean, someone who cares about our region. We've been leaning on him consistently as well. Add to that the advocacy with Maxine Waters, multiple meetings, continued engagement with her. Again, she's a very senior U.S. Congresswoman representing the state of California, and also critically the chair of the House Financial Services Committee. So all of that to say that our ambassador met with Ms. Smith. The meeting was very positive. We are looking not just to receive the details of the vaccine initiative, but through the levels that I have described, to help make recommendations and to lean forward into the planning to help shape what we may be likely to receive. I'm not able to share further details, but it is my anticipation that in the coming weeks we should have great news for the people of this region and the people of this country. That's our anticipation and hope based on the feedback we've been receiving.
Jude?
Yes, to the Education Minister, in terms of the vaccination of teachers, how is the government prioritizing that, especially in the context of the SCA exam?
And those are the discussions that we are having now. In the first instance, we had expected, given the face-to-face classes that were continuing, that we would deal with those teachers who were out face-to-face as the first cohort. However, that circumstance has changed now, and so we have to look at what are the most critical teachers that have to go forward and go out. The SCA exam administration certainly is something that is very critical and important, and so we will come up on a position, and as I expressed, we will discuss that position with tutor as well and get their perspective, and we will make a recommendation to the Ministry of Health early next week.
Is it the government's desire that teachers who are doing the exam, conducting the exam, have to be vaccinated?
It is not the government's desire, but it really is a desire of the country, because we want to ensure that the safety of our students are paramount. So not only the teachers who are doing the SEA, but they're also, in terms of CSEC and CAPE, the moderators for the different SVs and so on. So there are quite a few categories of persons that we have to look at, the vice principals and principals who may be out all day. There's also the civil staff in the school that would be assisting with preparations. So we have to look among the different categories of persons and make some decisions around that.
There was a question about deferrals, requests for, I'm wondering if it's like SCA and CXC level. We wanted to get like a feedback as to if people are taking up the offer, what sort of response?
With regard to CXC deferral requests, the number we have at this time, based on the information from the local registrar, would be 402 candidates, broken up into 201 from public secondary schools, private candidates 182, and from private registered schools 26 candidates, giving us a total of 402 candidates up to this time seeking deferral to 2022 CXC examinations. And with respect to the SEA, we have of the 19,829 students registered to write the SEA, 178 requests for deferral coming from 88 schools, primary schools.
The question would be the practicality also. Well, two questions. Let me break this up into two sections. There will be a space because a lot of schools will tell you that they are really packed and that they really try and people are begging for a place and you know, these very soft-hearted principals will always try to squeeze in one or more. So there may be a space consideration, that's the first thing. And the second is, where does the decision lie to grant the deferment? Does the decision lie in the ministry, or do you delegate that to each principal to say, well, we could fit in Tom, Jane, and so on?
When this matter of SCA deferrals, and I'll deal with CXA after, when the matter of SCA deferrals was raised, it really came out of the meeting with the stakeholders. And they expressed that though repeaters at standard 5 would be a normal part of the education landscape, there would have been some students who they feel, based on the circumstances, would need to repeat and would not need to go through the whole SCA examination to be able to do so. Because that's the usual thing. You do the exam, and based on the results, you repeat. And so the discussion really centered around principals being able to make that recommendation based on the requests of the parents. So it comes, the parents have to request it, and the principals have to recommend it, and certainly with all of the considerations of space and logistics included. Right? So that was the SCA. And it was always recognized that there would not be accommodation of large numbers, but it really was put in place to deal with the most vulnerable students who needed that. With respect to CXC, the students do have a right to defer because that is advanced to them from CXC. So at that level, the principal does not make a determination about their ability to defer or to write the examination at a later date. But the issue would be their ability to accept the student back into the classes as a repeater. As we know, that's not a new concept in Forms 5, a repeat of Form 5, that's not new. However, it really does, as it always does, come down to, can the school accommodate the logistics, the teachers, and so on? And also, it has also to do with the student and, their performance, not just necessarily academic in the school. So that has always been a part of the landscape. So students who are seeking to defer their examinations at this time, they are not necessarily going to have the ability to repeat it at the school. That is a decision of the principal, as it has always been. And the ministry is moving now to deal with the issuing of tuition in an online format, so that some of these students would be able to, because, of course, they were the adult classes that were offered through the Ministry of Social Development. There also used to be some lessons offered by the Ministry of Education. Those were all physical. In our present circumstance, those physical classes have had to stop. And so we are seeking now to institute that same level of tuition in an online environment, so that students who are deferring and do not have the option of going back to the school environment, or maybe do not want to, can take advantage of that. So we are in the planning stages of that virtual open school, we call it that, at the Ministry of Education, which will allow students who have deferred to also access tuition.
Question to the Foreign Affairs Minister. Given the expiration date that you announced of the vaccines, what assurances from the Health Ministry that these will be used in time, so that we don't have a situation of vaccines having been expired?
Yes, that's an important question. By nature of my duties, I communicate and work very closely with the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer. What I can say on the issue of expiration of vaccines is that our health team in Trinidad and Tobago know exactly what they are doing. They've programmed the expiration dates of the various vaccines into their vaccination rollout schedule, already including the currently considered donations, the ones that are coming in today and next week. We do not anticipate wastage of a single vial. So those issues are being well considered, and bear in mind that we now have some experience under our belt in this country in managing. I think there's been some good initial exposure, and as more vaccines come in, the health team will be building on the experience and the lessons learned from the initial weeks. So it's an important consideration, but that is being folded into the programming and being well considered at this time. I assure you of it.
Conversations with the United States and the government there, so far, any sense of the expiration date of the vaccines that they plan to donate to other nations, including ours, who could benefit from that?
No, we don't have those details as yet, as we've continually indicated. Some of the technical specifics have yet to be finalized and shared with the global community and the potential beneficiaries. So, but again, the United States has made it very clear, the White House has made it clear, that what they are seeking to do is to really establish themselves as the global leader in changing the paradigm with respect to constrained vaccine access for developing countries. I am certain as part of those calculations, they would ensure that sufficient time after donations are made, sufficient time would be formulated to ensure that the vaccines can be utilized. Again, we're in constant communication with the decision makers, with the technical people, and there's a very positive sense that what will be disseminated will be very useful to the global community and small island states like ourselves.
One more question for the Education Minister. Dr. Dolly, there's a subset of the population who are saying that, my children have been preparing for the exam for June 10th, and they're wondering, why they just can't get it over with, or why they can't do the exam. Is there anything you can tell these parents to kind of get them on board and support the extension of the SE date?
We would have waited until now to announce any change because the government did not want to disappoint the students who have been diligently working for June the 10th. So when we discussed it in April, even though the numbers were higher than they were in February, when we did the first phase 1 reopening of schools, and even in the face of not being able to open the primary schools on April 12th as we had hoped, we still stuck with June 10th, really hoping that the measures put in place to dampen the numbers would be effective. But up to last night, I think we saw how many persons are arrested for breaking the curfew. So what has really happened is that even though the government has tried to put progressive measures in place to reduce the numbers, even though we have been speaking about giving our children a chance to do this, it just has not happened. And at this time, looking at the numbers we are facing now, it would be irresponsible of this government to allow our children to come out in the atmosphere where they may not be safe. And so we held for as long as we could, trying to see if these numbers would come down. But we have seen what it is this week, and we still see people doing things that would, work against these numbers coming down. And so it is with great regret that we have to push it back. That was not the intention. We didn't want it to be like that. But this is where we are. This is the cards that we have been dealt, and we have to play them that way. So our number one priority is safety. We understand the disappointment of the students. I have been an SEA parent 3 times, and I understand what that means for a child preparing and then having to be told that the exam is going to be pushed back. We did wait as long as we could, hoping that the numbers would decrease in response to the behavior of the population, but it just hasn't happened that way. So at this point, that is where we are, and it is, I know it is disappointing for quite a number of children, and we are very sorry that it has come to this, but we look forward to us being able to reduce those numbers through our own self-responsibility, reduce those numbers so that at least these children can look forward to July 1st as that set date, and they can get out there, do this examination, and get it over with.
One more question, Ms. Minister Dolly. We are thinking of, I think, the third week in September for placement. So is it that the term one is going to start at a later date than it usually does?
We look at those discussions, but I can tell you, interestingly, in 2020, the students came out in October, the Form 1s, and I can tell you that on the basis of the feedback from the principals of secondary schools associations, they said that the integration, though virtual, went very well into Form 1. So it is not anticipated that even if the school term begins, as it is scheduled to begin, before the Forms 1 get into the school system, with that very small delay, it's not anticipated that there will be any great problems with integration into the school term.
Any more questions?
Well, anyone who could answer, but I'm thinking, given that the Parliament, the House of Representatives, is to debate the 3-month extension of the state of emergency from the date it was proclaimed. I know that, for example, the salary relief grant was really designed from May. Is the government looking at any consideration of such financial assistance going into that 3-month extended period of the SOE?
So, Jewel, I think you will recognize that this is all happening in very challenging times economically for us. I do believe that the Minister of Finance is going to be having a press conference, and I'm sure he will be addressing that directly, and I wouldn't want to preempt his comments on it. Is that it? You'll let the Minister of Agriculture off easy today. Mr. Amrat, my apologies.
Minister, just in the context of the distribution of the food packages through the constituency offices and so on, what measures are in place to ensure that there's no, that in other words, people who actually need them get them, and it doesn't become a political football on either side?
Right. Very good question. Now, the reason I gave the dates earlier, it was, we were dealing with an emergency situation and tight time frames. So on May 3rd, the announcement was made, and on May 7th, we did the first delivery. On May 7th, we distributed to 2,000 families through 8 constituencies. On May 10th, the next day, we delivered a further 18 constituencies, another 2,000. 16 of those constituencies got 100 each, 2 got 200 each, Arima and Pointe-a-Pierre. And tomorrow, we're doing a delivery. Tomorrow, we'll get to 14,000, and by May 31st, we'll get to the 25,000. Now, somebody asked me that on social media, why don't we do this? And in fact, the person suggested that we send a social welfare officer to every constituency with the hampers or the packages. And I said to them, if you can't trust members of parliament, and if you can't trust staff paid by the parliament, then who we would trust? So the reliance is on the members of parliament. They submit the names in advance. We ask them to submit it so we can do the packages. They submit the names. At some stage, the time is too rushed to have the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services verify the names, but we will, just for good order, double-check when we can. But it is for the members of Parliament to provide that assurance that those persons are the ones who would, who are the people who should be getting it. And on the May 3rd announcement, there were specific areas that the people were not going to be able to work, and our first letter to them via NAMDEVCO was to say, focus on those persons. But of course, by May 10th, And thereafter, there was an expansion of that group, and we've had to work with a wider pool. We recognize that. And that is one of the reasons why we've also worked with some NGOs across the country, and we intend to work with more NGOs who represent specific vulnerabilities, and that would bring even more assurance, not that I distrust the members of Parliament, that it is reaching where it should reach.
In terms of NGOs, in terms of anything that they receive to give assistance, same sort of procedure?
Yeah, they would also supply the names. We need the names for some sort of assurance and for later verification. So we ask all of them. So far we've been able to work through a few NGOs, and we have requests from the National AIDS Coordinating Committee. They have NGOs that work with them, and they've identified 439 families. We have, for example, the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, which operates in Enterprise. They have asked for the Single Mothers Association. They've made a request. They're based in Sawa. They've asked, and we've offered them tomorrow, and now they've said they will take delivery on Monday. So we have those requests, and then we have unfortunately, or fortunately, when you have this responsibility, individuals, every day people ask me, Minister, how to get a hamper, how to get a hamper. So I also get names via social media, and I submit it to NAMDEVCO and ask them to do the verification. But when you have somebody like last night, a lady called Flora from Longdenville reached out to me via social media, and she said, Minister, our home is 13 persons, and nobody is working. And I said to her, have you gone to social welfare? And she said, no. That is information I have a responsibility to pass on. In fact, I listened a little bit of what MP Saddam Hussein was saying yesterday. And it surprised me, because it surprised me that of all the MPs, he would be one out in the public talking about that, because I received several messages from persons in his constituency, and they were saying, we have been told, there's one lady, Carrie Williams, is one I remember, and in her message to me, she said she's written, and I was surprised at that, she said she's written, and she's been told that they have no packages. And I know for a fact we've sent 200 to that constituency and member of Parliament. But as I said, what was being said yesterday at the press conference was that we were promised 600 and it was reduced to 400. That is not so. It was doubled to 1,200. But you will only get your hampers if you indicate, I have 100 names, I have 100 families to give it to. So MP Saddam Hussein was really a shock to me, because so far he's only given 200 names. And even though I said that via social media yesterday, and I said, I expect Saddam Hussein to send 400 names today. Before coming here, I asked NAMDEVCO, and they said to me, no, we've gotten nothing from no MP, as a matter of fact. And just as I came in, they said that they got a request from Michelle Benjamin from Moruga, who's already gotten 400, and she's asked for the remaining 200, and they will give it to her. And this is what Carrie Williams said to me on Monday. Don't mean to bother you, but please let us know when Sawa Barataria is going to get some hampers for distribution to the poor. Every time I write to Saddam Hussein office, they keep saying they have none. So why are other constituencies receiving and we in Sawa are suffering? So that I had to act on that, and I told her that packages have been given. But if we are moving so quickly to give the people who need them the packages via the MP, and you have an MP in Sawa Barataria who has only been able to give 200 names and goes on a press conference and says, well, the government is denying me, the PNM is, something is wrong with him, he needs to get his head examined. And because, I will tell you this, because we monitor it, and as a minister, I monitor the packages, the packing process, and the records. I know who get and who didn't get and so on. And when I heard from NAMDEVCO that they were preparing for Sawa Barataria but not getting the names, and had received a request from 2 NGOs in Sawa Barataria, I named a third one today, the Single Mothers Association. 2 NGOs in Sawa Barataria reached out to NAMDEVCO, and they got they got packages for distribution. And that gives me some assurance that while Saddam Hussein sits wherever and does nothing, somebody in Sawa Barataria, 2 NGOs and 2 long-standing ones in Sawa Barataria, they got packages. And people like Carrie Williams, who wrote to me, may eventually get via an NGO. So the 2 from the Sawa Barataria, Barataria Improvement Group, and I can't remember the name of the other one. Progress is the name of the other one. They got, and we do that. Now, as you prepare the packages for distribution, you would find that because of the volume of the produce, you may have some extra packages. We're able to generate more than we thought, and it is the NGOs we reach out to say, well, okay, we estimate that in today's distribution we'll have 50 extra, and we can give it to you. The people who have asked, as I say, are the National AIDS Coordinating Committee, Single Women Association, Mount Moriah Spiritual Baptist Church, Police 2nd Division Welfare Committee have asked for 1,000, and National Carnival Bands Association has asked for 100, and we intend to try as far as possible to deal with all those requests that we have. So working with NGOs is the way to answer that gives us a further assurance. And all the members of Parliament who are working with their committees, for example, MP Munilal was one of the first to reach up to 400, and I think he will go beyond 600. And if he goes beyond 600 in his community, and we are able to deal with it, we would deal with it. And this continues into June and July. And the Minister of Finance has told the country that if it needs to go beyond that to the end of September, he's prepared to do that.
Contact with MP Hussein in terms of justifying for him directly?
Well, I am. MP Hussein has the luxury of going to press conferences and so on. I do the people's work, so I would he's my friend, and I will reach out to him. I made the point that we are the only 2 youth parliamentarians serving in the current parliament. Problem is that I moved on to the adult parliament, and he's not. So I will reach out to him and tell him to send the 400 names and get his packet, get the business going. And MP Ratiram is at 400. So while Saddam is at 200, MP Ratiram is at 400, and he will get his packages. This morning I spoke to MP Dinesh Rambali in Chaguanas West, and I said to him, this is having a very important impact on your constituency. And I would like if you get involved by first coming, what we are doing, these packages, that wood for the large wholesale market has been available to us. We completed it. We made it. The Chaguanas Borough Corporation was making a lot of noise saying they want it. We offered them it. They never took it up. And we've decided to use this to prepare all those packages. So some economic activity is being created in Chaguanas. Some jobs are being created, and about 2 weeks ago the cabinet decided, after a long discussion and so on, that this veggie box will remain a permanent feature of what we do for families in this country. So right now we do food cards and a lot of different things, and maybe at the start of the next financial year this will become a permanent feature. And I told MP Rambali, I said, this is in Chaguanas. When I look at the records now, NAMDEVCO is buying a significant amount of produce from Chaguanas West constituency and Caroni East constituency and the Mayaro constituency. And I said to him, this is going to generate a lot of opportunity for your farmers. I want you to come and see the packing house and come and see the workers, what they're doing. And I also want you to talk to your farmers, to explain to them the long-term opportunities that are being created. And I must say he was very receptive, and he promised to make the visit, and I'm looking forward to doing it with him. And this represents important opportunity and long-term opportunities, both for our families in this country, the farmers, and also to really build on what we've been talking about for a long time, which is that if you eat things that you grow and you eat things that are grown in your country, you stand a better life of living, chance of living a longer life.
The NGOs that would have been, that you would have assisted, like the NAMDEVCO, was there a formal process to apply, or were they just was it their own initiative?
Well, this thing happened we did this last year. Last year, the distributions were via MPs and faith-based organizations. So some of those, once they hear veggie boxes, they naturally reach out to NAMDEVCO. And the mere fact that I'm saying this today means that we'll get a lot of people coming forward. And I do have a problem with that. Individuals will come forward, NGOs will come forward, and we will try to, over the 3-month period, we'll try to satisfy as many of them as we could. So the process is that they would reach out. The current restrictions mean that they may not bring a letter to the office, they may not be interviewed. So a lot of them are doing things via social media, and we are accepting that.
Someone informed me there were a national who was evacuated from St. Vincent. She and her son had received their first dose of AstraZeneca in St. Vincent, but have had difficulty getting their second dose in Trinidad and seeking some assistance. I'm not sure exactly which minister will be able to.
I am not the Minister of Health. But what I can tell you is that those types of specific, unusual cases that require individual attention, I would welcome if the details can be shared. If they're shared with me, I will certainly pass it on to colleagues in the health sector. If it is shared with the nearest health center, those are the types of matters that can be readily addressed, particularly if someone has started their vaccination course. You wouldn't want it to lapse. So please feel free to share the details, and I'm very confident that your contact's case can be readily resolved.
Minister de Monaco, if you allow me just a minute, I feel constrained to say something on behalf of the MPs who really stand in the gap and work very hard. I'm speaking about across the divide in being the first responders to this situation with the hampers and so on. And I can tell you that many MPs are in contact with village councils, with NGOs in their areas as well. MPs like myself who have been here last year, we would have a database of persons who would have come in last year. I myself do monthly hampers. That has been a standing feature of my office, as many other MPs as well. So we do have a database of persons that we know from our communities that need assistance, and that information rolls in from your different groups in your area as well. And so that is how you are able to build lists that are quite long, longer than you're able to supply for persons that do need assistance. So it is not simply about giving who you know, but it is also about collecting information and being that repository for building these data banks to assist the public. And MPs really do work very hard on this, and the staff of their offices, at this time, we are very, very pressed in getting the response from persons. And I can tell you, in my own constituency of St. Anne's East, we have over 50 requests coming in. We have a hotline that persons can WhatsApp, send the information. And so we are very, very active at this time, getting all the information from the public and trying, as we get the hampers, to give out as many as possible to those who need, not just those that we know. So on behalf of the MPs, I can tell you that it is a lot of work to be able to rationalize and organize and respond to ensure, because these hampers are perishable. So when they arrive at your office and you have 100 frozen chickens or 200 frozen chickens, you have to put all of those arrangements in place to hand those out very quickly, and we really work hard at doing so.
Okay, everyone. I want to thank you all for attending. Minister Gadsby-Dolly, I think that was a perfect way to end it. Before we go, I just want to reiterate to the viewing audience that while we are pressing to get vaccines in, vaccines are our first line of defense. Please continue to follow the health protocols, wash your hands, watch your distance, limit your movement as much as possible, and please wear your mask to cover your nose and your mouth. Thank you very much.
And we've come to the end of today's post-cabinet media briefing featuring the Education Minister, Agriculture, as well as Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, And in short, SEA teachers will be put forward to be accommodated by the Ministry of Health for the vaccines, and SEA is delayed by 3 weeks. And we also have more vaccines entering T&T, as well as our farmers and agro professionals are continuing to hold the line and feed our people. And remember, you can keep up to date with the latest stories on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at TTT Live Online. I'm DK Rasta. Have a good afternoon.
This is TTT. Live for local.